Hello and welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. I am a first-generation immigrant to the United States. When my parents and I moved here in the early 90s, I was 4 years old. Given us just moving to a new country, I didn't have much. My dad cleaned pools, and most of the toys I had were toys that were left behind by other kids. I remember having a collection of several toy cars, but never recalled which was my favorite. This was around 1992 to 1994. At some point as I got a little bit older, I'm sure my parents donated the toys to charity. I'm assuming this was in the mid/late 90s. Fast forward to 2017. I am 29 years old, my long-term girlfriend and I, now my wife and mother to my beautiful baby, finally buy our first house. We are excited. We moved all of our stuff into the garage and throughout the living room over the past week, since we were renting only 1.5 miles up the road. We're cleaning up some of the spots the cleaners missed. We moved the huge sectional couch they left for us, and as we pull it back, I find the same exact toy car that I had when I was 4 to 5 or so years old. I haven't thought of it in decades, but I instantly remember it was my favorite because it was higher than the other cars I had, so it rolled across the carpet better. I know the family before us had 2 kids, I think a bit older, maybe 7 and 10 or so. What are the odds that this was the only toy left behind by them? What are the odds of these kids playing with such an old obscure toy car? I looked it up. It was produced in 1984. It was pretty random for me to be playing with it 10 years later when I had it, but it was extremely random for kids to be playing with it 40 years after it was released. I know it was mass-produced, but they weren't mass-produced on the scale they are today. I know it's not a super unique toy car, but the odds of this happening is just crazy. I can't explain it. I still have it and will always keep it because it's just such a bizarre occurrence. Story 2. I can't get this out of my head, it's driving me insane. Last week, I was cooking rice for dinner and was making it with pork. I realized the rice would take around 20 minutes to cook and the pork around 45, and the water is already boiling for the rice. I put the pork in the oven, take the heat off the stove, take the lid off the rice pot, and play the crossword on my phone for about 10 minutes to pass time, and so that the food is ready at the same time. I remember distinctly putting the lid right next to the pot, and it was a perfect fitting lid. 10 minutes go by, and I look at the stove. The lid is much larger, not the one I was using before, and looks the same as one for a larger pot I have, and now the lid to this smaller pot is nowhere to be found. I chopped it up as maybe not thinking clearly about the lid when I started boiling the water, but I know the lid was smaller. And now I have 2 identical lids for a larger pot and no lids for a smaller pot, and I have never had 2 of these lids before. It has been a week, and I have done a deep and heavy search through my kitchen. No sign of the smaller lid. I told my family about it, and they also think it is strange because they don't remember our household having 2 identical lids that are larger either. Story 3. So I have something similar to this. I have an espresso machine that I clean out once a week. I have to take the water tank off, and then there is a little door that I open to take out the infuser, which I then leave in hot water for 20 minutes to get coffee grounds removed. I drank a cup and then start the cleaning. It's important that I just had a cup, because without the infuser part, there is no coffee. Opened up the door, and it was empty. No infuser. I was confused and thought, did I already move it and forgot? But no. Meanwhile, my husband wakes up and helps me find it. The infuser isn't small either, larger than my hand, so if it fell you'd definitely hear it. Husband looks into the machine, no infuser. We are both searching for a while, even under furniture. I know that sounds cray, but at this point the whole thing was crazy. Then my husband asked, how big is it again? I am the machine caretaker, LOL. And I said, just open the infuser compartment and look at the cavity, that's the size. He opens the compartment, and the infuser was in the machine. This happened again a few days later, and I actually just sat back down, waited an hour, and when I opened it back up, it was back in the machine. Like WTH? Also, our 16-year-old dog disappears from time to time. Not outside, but inside. We live in a mother-in-law wing. My kids are all grown, and my daughter bought our big house, and we moved into the wing. Since our dog is very old and has occasional accidents, the door connecting is always closed, so she doesn't pee on her floor. Our wing has a hallway, a living room, kitchen, bedroom, and bathroom. We searched everywhere. We went outside, fenced in. We looked under the deck, behind every tree. Nothing. When we came back in, she laid in the middle of the living room. This happens now at least once a week. We joke and call it the netherworld, and that she is probably getting acquainted considering her age. But all jokes aside, what is happening? Story 4. So this is something that happened to me and a friend of mine at a beach in southern France some years ago, and that is still creeping us out today, and I'm very curious to know if something similar happened to other people. So we were sitting on a bench close to the beach. This place is quite busy when it's daytime, but very calm and desert at night, almost nobody here. Like we love to do on weekends or holidays, me and my friend were just chilling, staring at the beach, with just a few city lights still up not far from the beach while smoking. It was around midnight, and at some point we saw two people who looked like a 40 years old something dad and his around 10 years old daughter. We both still remember to this day clearly what they said when they walked past us. The girl who seemed joyful told her dad she wanted churros, and her dad replied that she already ate something not long ago. We were like, okay, weird, it's very rare to see people here at this time, and even weirder that the kid is still up and wanting churros at midnight when everything is obviously closed. But hey, nothing that strange. We just minded our business and kept smoking and chilling. 1 hour later, at around 1 a.m., the exact same dad and daughter were just walking in front of us again. But what creeped us out a little is that they were saying the exact same thing than earlier. The daughter wanting churros and the dad telling her that she already ate something not long ago, with the exact same words. At least that's how my friend and me both remember it. We were kind of creeped out, but just told ourselves that it might be some tourists who loves night walks. Weird for a kid this age, but hey, okay. The thing is, the exact same shit happened an hour later, at around 2 a.m., and the exact same freaking conversation. The little girl wanting churros and her dad saying, no, you already ate not long ago. Now me and my friend were just absolutely creeped out. We hesitated for a second and discussed whether or not we should try following them and talking to them. But my friend was very, very scared. He started to think those were ghosts and that we should not disturb them. So we just went back home, and funnily enough, we never chilled at this spot again since this day. Unlike my friend, I don't really believe in ghosts, so I am really interested to hear. Story 5. I'm 22 now, but this incident has stayed with me so clearly that I remember it better than most things in my life. This happened when I was around 17. I wasn't intoxicated or dreaming. I was completely aware and conscious during the whole event. I had gone to visit my aunt's house with my mom. She lives in an old government apartment building, the kind that has 5 to 6 floors with identical and old concrete walls and staircases. Her flat was on the 3rd floor. At one point, I decided to go downstairs to watch newborn puppies. After watching them when I started climbing back up, I remember passing floor after floor, but nothing looked familiar. There were no markings or floor numbers, even no apartment gates. Just the same repeating walls and stairs. It felt like I had climbed a lot more than just 3 floors. And then suddenly I reached the top of the staircase and everything changed. Instead of the usual floor and doors, I saw what looked like a school corridor, not the school corridor we have in Indian high schools. A long hallway, lined with lockers, just like the ones you see in American high school movies. It was brightly lit and completely unfamiliar. And there were kids inside who felt like they were not Indian, going about like it was totally normal. I just stood there on the staircase, shocked, staring, wondering what are these kids doing here, and why this old building has something that looks so clean and good. I remember very clearly, a young black girl looked at me from inside the corridor and waved or said hi. She smiled like I was supposed to be there. I didn't respond. I was frozen. Then I slowly turned around and walked back down the stairs. As I climbed down, the same old staircase returned, the usual old walls and layout. And as soon as I passed one more level down, I was suddenly at the familiar 3rd floor again. Everything was normal. Out of confusion, I went back up again, and this time it was just the 4th floor apartment. No corridor, no lockers, no students, no black girl that waved at me. I even asked my aunt later if there was any school nearby, or if the building had any sort of renovated section. She had no idea what I was talking about and said there was nothing like that. She assumed I was daydreaming. But I know I wasn't. This wasn't a dream. It felt way too real. The lighting, the walls, the girl, the way she noticed me, all of it was vivid. I still remember every detail. I've had dreams. I've had hallucinations. This was not one of them. This felt like I slipped into another version of reality for a few minutes. I have no explanation for it, but it happened, and I haven't forgotten it ever since. Didn't have courage to discuss this with someone before they declare me crazy. Was this a time slip, a dimension bleed, a liminal space event, or something else. Story 6. Yesterday at 5 p.m., I was playing the new OG map game mode on Fortnite while sitting in a Discord call with my friends. Suddenly, I received a missed phone call from a number with no caller ID. Usually, I don't answer calls from unfamiliar numbers, but I was expecting a call from a job I had applied for. Thinking it might be them, I decided to answer. Upon answering the second call from the same no caller ID number, I asked, "Hello." The loud gunshots and effects from Fortnite made it hard to hear at first, so I removed my headset to listen better. The female voice on the other end sounded like my girlfriend, and her tone seemed offended when I asked who it was. To confirm if it was her, I inquired about the caller ID, and the response matched how my girlfriend would react if she was genuinely confused. She asked to come over, suggesting a Lyft instead of Uber because of a $5 discount I had for the Lyft ride, and also we share the same Lyft and Uber accounts. Despite being surprised by the accurate details, something felt off, especially since she didn't know the driver was even close by. Slightly suspicious, I bought the Lyft but then hesitated when she asked for the money instead so she can buy it herself. This led me to consider a potential AI scam, and so I canceled the ride, especially since she had mentioned not wanting to come home with me earlier that day. Upon calling my actual girlfriend, she denied making any calls, leaving me puzzled. The bizarre encounter left me contemplating the idea of alternate realities intersecting due to her very accurate responses, as no other explanation seemed plausible. Perhaps in a different universe, or just an AI scam trying to get money from me. It was too coincidental though, and someone would have to be stalking me to know those things. I do think it's possible though that higher versions of ourselves exist with everything we desire, waiting to be manifested through the energy we create around us. Share your thoughts or similar experiences if you've encountered something similar. Story 7. I have the same routine every day. I get up at about 5 a.m., eat something real quick and watch a little TV, get dressed and head to work. I have one roommate, and we've had this apartment for 2-ish years. So about 7 or so months ago, February, I got up to get ready, and everything felt very off. Couldn't put my finger on why, but everything felt creepy. Then I noticed on the counter was a tray American flag napkins, some homemade cookies with red and blue icing on them in the shape of stars, and some what I assumed to be off-brand M&Ms. I thought it was weird since it was kind of still winter for my roommate to randomly leave out 4th of July stuff. I get some food and turn on the TV and notice it's just random channels. I can't get to any of the streaming apps, it's just regular TV, but old. It's old-looking commercials, newscasts, and one of them actually said something about a 4th of July sale. I was so freaking confused. I finally get to a weather channel, and in the corner of it has the date. July 3rd, 1986. I thought for sure it was like IDK Nostalgia Channel, or something. But every single channel I turned it was all old commercials and TV shows. Mind you, I was born in 2003, so I'm not too familiar with 80s stuff, so at the time it just looked old to me El Mayo. At this point I'm freaked out and try to call my mom. I'm not sure why I just felt like this was who to call for some reason. When I go to dial her number, my phone just keeps trying to dial, but never actually connects to the call. Now I'm really bugged out. I'm starting to panic a little now, and go to wake my roommate up. On my way to her room, I stop in the hallway, and see a woman in about her late 70s crossing the hallway holding a tray with something on it. She goes from my roommate's room to mine, and disappears. It didn't look like a ghost, that I assume, I've never seen a ghost, but looked like a totally regular person. Panic wasn't even a word to describe myself at this point. So I ran into my roommate's room, and flipped out, and woke her up. I told her what was happening, expecting her to think I'm nuts, but she wanted to see what I was talking about. When she came with me, the 4th of July food was gone, and the TV was back to normal. She believes me, and we still wonder if it will happen to one of us again. All I can think is maybe there was a time glitch of some sort. Still freaks me the hell out thinking about it. Story 8. I don't think I've shared this story here, but this is why I joined this subreddit. And my daughter is 21 now. This happened when she was maybe 2.5 years old. I was in the kitchen, which was wide open to the living room. Husband was sitting on the couch watching TV, half asleep. Daughter toddling around. I opened the oven door to check on food, and turned to get a pot holder out of the nearby drawer. When I turned back, daughter was almost to me, and suddenly fell forward with her hands out. I shrieked, "Oh God! Help!" to my husband, and in that instant images flashed through my mind of her landing on it, burning herself horrifically, us going to the emergency room, her being there for a very, very long time, months, her growing older at various stages covered in horrible burn scars and scar tissue limiting the movement in her hands and on her face, her going through plastic surgery after plastic surgery, our life becoming all about hospitals and surgeries. I felt I lived those lifetimes all in an instant. Then suddenly I snapped back into the present and my husband was looking at me saying, "What?" all irritated, and my daughter was on her hands and knees at least 3 feet back from the oven, where she definitely wasn't seconds prior. I said, "She fell and almost landed right on the oven door," and he said, "She's nowhere near there," and just took a sip of his beer. I've never ever forgotten this. It was a defining moment in my parenting life, despite her being my youngest and me living through a lot. I told her about this when she was an adult, and she was shocked she didn't remember it happening. And I said, "Well, you wouldn't, because somehow you just fell down and toddlers do that a lot." And she has told me a few times since how shaken she felt hearing it and how it haunts her now, because she feels like that timeline was somehow real and happened but didn't. I've never been so thankful for a glitch in my life. I've never experienced anything like it, and I still think about it from time to time, and my heart jumps into my throat. I know it happened. There's zero doubt. It is what it is. Story 9. I haven't really had any weird experiences like this before, and I wanted to shrug it off. But my husband is a huge skeptic and usually comes up with some explanation for everything. This stumped him. So I was serving dinner tonight, soup, and as I was getting ready to ladle soup into our bowls, I noticed that we had 4 of these particular bowls in the cupboard. This was extremely strange and confused me immediately, because we bought this particular set of 4 bowls at Target many years ago. There are only the 2 of us in our house, so we would never buy 6. Anyway, about 2 years ago we broke one of them, which bummed me out because I hate having odd numbers of dishes. So we have had 3 of them this whole time. I am 100% certain of this. I actually stopped when I opened the cupboard because I was like, WTF. And I said to my husband, "We only have 3 of these ramen bowls, right?" And he said yes, because we broke one a long time ago. And so I pulled them out and showed him all 4, and he was like, I shrug it off. I grabbed 2 of the bowls and 2 big plates for garlic bread. As I'm getting the plates out, one crashes hard onto the counter and somehow doesn't break. We both breathe a sigh of relief and head to our table and start eating. Halfway through the meal, my husband, who is not a clumsy person, suddenly drops the ramen bowl onto the big plate and both shatter immediately. We looked at each other in shock. So now we are back to 3 ramen bowls again and the broken plate, which I had almost shattered moments before. Just feels like the universe heard me and corrected its mistake. Ick man. It was weird and I feel weird. Thoughts? Story 10. It was supposed to be just another ordinary day. I was heading over to my mother-in-law's apartment to pick up my husband and our kids. She lives on the 3rd floor of an old building with one wide staircase winding its way up. No elevator, no other way out. I rang the doorbell from the hallway, expecting my husband to come down. He was still upstairs with the kids, so I headed up to meet him. One staircase between us. One. But somehow we never crossed paths. When I got to the 3rd floor, the door was already open. My toddler was there, standing with my mother-in-law. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and I waited for my husband to come down. But to my surprise, my mother-in-law casually mentioned that he had already left with our other toddler. I froze. He left. How could he have left without passing me? There's only one staircase. Trying to shake off the weird feeling crawling up my spine, I went back downstairs. And that's when I saw him, standing by the car as if nothing had happened. I couldn't hold back my confusion. How did you get here without passing me? The look on his face when he responded sent chills down my spine. He was just as bewildered as I was. I was still upstairs when you rang the doorbell, he said, his voice unsteady. We stared at each other, the realization sinking in. Somehow, we had both used the same staircase at the same time, and yet we hadn't seen each other. Not once. Not even a glimpse. He was as shocked as I was. It felt as if we had become invisible to each other, slipping through the same space, completely unaware of the other's presence. We didn't know what to say. How could something like this happen? It defied all logic. I've read about strange occurrences like this, even lurking on forums filled with stories of the bizarre and unexplainable. But I never thought something like this would happen to us. And now, here we are, both of us in absolute shock, grappling with an event we can't explain. It feels like we crossed into some strange, invisible boundary. A reality where, for a moment, we weren't part of each other's worlds. Story 11. Okay, so first things first. Keep the temperature in the car a little lower, and make sure you're well rested before driving, please. As you might guess, yes, it's one of those car accident stories, but I really want to share my experience. It was the day after my birthday, and I had spent it with my girlfriend at her place. I had to wake up around 5 a.m. to go to work, but I didn't feel tired or anything. It was a very cold day, around -5 degrees Celsius. I turned the heater in my car almost all the way up, and everything was going smoothly. Then, out of nowhere, I'm not sure if it was because of a micro-sleep or something, but I was driving normally, and then am much further away, and am about 2 meters to hit a car on a left lane. I lost my left side mirror in the process. I screamed like a little girl and slammed on the brakes. I panicked and tried to drive away, but then I turned back around and saw a man in the other car. I see this detailed picture of this car rigged in front of me. It was white sedan, but then there is a different damaged car with driver Insti, mid-30s. I drove up to him, and he asked me what the hell I was doing. I apologized and told him I'd cover the damages. The man seemed really scared, but I felt strangely calm, almost like everything was happening as if written in a story. Like I was joking around and said, "Sorry mate, I don't know what happened." I offered to pay for his damages and move on, which he accepted. I didn't tell my parents immediately about the near accident. I just moved on with my life. I did tell my closest friends, but to my surprise, they acted really weird about it. They kept asking why I went back to the guy. Only my girlfriend had some sane talk with me. Anyway, I started to notice that things felt a little different than before. For example, my dad looks way younger than he did even 7 years ago. I mean, he literally looks younger than I remember him. Also, I saw that I had been playing Darkest Dungeon in the past week, which is strange because I literally forgot I even had this game in my library. But the weirdest thing for me is that people around me seem to know a different version of me. For instance, I don't remember winning a lot of money at the casino. Sadly, I don't have it because I wasted it, and I don't recall meeting my friends with my girlfriend at a certain spot many times, but my friends and my girlfriend remember those moments in great detail. They even remember stories I was involved in, but I really don't know them. I've had near-death experiences before, but this time it feels uncanny. The strangest feeling is that I feel like I look slightly different than I remember. My voice is slightly deeper, and people keep saying I've always had a deeper voice, even though I was a squeaker my whole life. This happened over a month ago now. Since then, I've spoken about the incident with many people, but I haven't told them about the strange changes I've noticed in myself. I try to just ignore those things, but sometimes I feel really isolated, and if my past was changed to avoid this car crash. Story 12. This happened a few months ago, and I've been meaning to post it here, but it honestly freaked me out so bad that I didn't want to write it out for a while. I'm curious about any similar experiences. Some background. I live in College House, owned by the college and close to campus, with 2 of my friends, but my boyfriend has been a sort of unofficial 4th housemate for a while now. He's good friends with many of my friends, and especially the ones who live in the house, so it's safe to say they know him, and what he looks like extremely well. This is important later. Our house is directly next to a big parking lot which fully lit with street lights at night, like a grocery store or mall parking lot, that belongs to one of our college's sports facilities, and it's completely empty about 80% of the time unless there's a game or practice. This is where my boyfriend and any friends who come to visit will park when they come over. The night this happened, my boyfriend was at his fraternity house for an event, but was planning to come over to our house afterwards. Just me and one other friend were awake, and both sitting together on our front porch talking, not drinking or anything of the sort, when we saw my boyfriend's car coming down the road parallel to our house and the parking lot. It's also important to note that boyfriend has a very distinct car, foreign car, outside modifications, unusual color, and we live in a relatively small town where I have still to this day never seen anyone with the same car. I wasn't sure for a second that it was him, as he usually calls me on his way home from almost anywhere, and he hadn't done that. But as his car got closer and started to turn into the parking lot, I was absolutely certain it was him. Like I said, the lot is fully lit up at night, so not only did I see the car in full light, but I could see through the window enough to see it was him. We thought so much, so it was him, that friend, and I got up and started walking to the lot to greet him. She got over there just a moment sooner than me and waved at him as he was pulling in, but he only looked at her and just kept driving through to the other side of the lot. As it would be in character, we thought surely he was fucking with us and was going to turn around, but we watched as he pulled out of the parking lot fully and drove down the road in the opposite direction he came. I called him immediately, Thought maybe he left something at the fraternity house, or was just doing a really elaborate and now slightly annoying bit. When I tell you my jaw dropped when he answered, and I could hear from the background that he was still at the frat house, music, people talking. Even though I could still see his car driving down the road, I asked him if he had just been home and left for some reason. He said he hadn't, but he was probably going to leave soon. He asked why, and I just told him I'd explain later and hung up. My friend was so freaked out she didn't want to talk about it, and still doesn't like it when I bring it up. We both saw him, but she definitely got a better look and swears on everything it was him driving. Hell, I know for absolute sure it was his car. We've had a few other weird experiences in this house that oddly enough center around my boyfriend, and it's hard to tell if it's more paranormal or glitch in the Matrix, but this one absolutely felt like a glitch, especially considering that him coming down our road and turning into that parking lot is a routine thing that happens at least 10 times a week. Guess the universe was just ahead by a few minutes that night and played the track of my boyfriend coming home too early.